I should have trusted my instincts from the beginning. But when you're paying $800 a month for a studio apartment in downtown Portland, you learn to ignore a lot of things. The scratching sounds in the walls were just mice, I told myself. The occasional thump above my ceiling was just the upstairs neighbor dropping something. The feeling of being watched was just paranoia from working too many late shifts at the coffee shop. I moved into the Meridian Arms in September. It was an old building built in the 1920s with thick walls and high ceilings that made it feel substantial despite its age. My apartment was on the second floor, sandwiched between two others, with a fire escape outside my bedroom window that the landlord assured me was purely decorative since the building had interior fire exits. The first month was blissful. After sharing a cramped two-bedroom with 3 roommates in college, having my own space felt like luxury. I arranged my few pieces of furniture, hung some prints on the walls, and settled into a routine of work, Netflix, and blessed solitude. The scratching started in October. Soft, intermittent sounds that seemed to come from inside the wall behind my bed. I mentioned it to Mrs. Margaret, the elderly woman who lived next door, when we bumped into each other in the hallway. "Oh yes, mice," she said, nodding knowingly. "This old building, you know, I have traps if you need them." I bought some traps and set them along the baseboards, but I never caught anything. The scratching continued, usually late at night when I was trying to sleep. Sometimes it sounded like tiny claws on wood. Other times it was more rhythmic, almost like tapping. In November, I started noticing things were out of place. Nothing dramatic. My coffee mug would be on the right side of the sink instead of the left where I always put it. A book I'd left on the coffee table would be on the kitchen counter. My laptop would be closed when I was sure I'd left it open. I blamed it on stress and lack of sleep. I've been working extra shifts to save up for Christmas gifts, and exhaustion can play tricks on your mind. Besides, who would want to break into my apartment to rearrange my stuff and steal nothing? The first truly unsettling incident happened on a Tuesday in late November. I came home from work around 9 p.m. to find my front door unlocked. Not just unlocked, standing slightly ajar. I stood in the hallway for a full minute, key in hand, trying to remember if I could have possibly left it that way. I'm obsessive about locking doors. Always have been, ever since a break-in at my childhood home when I was 12. I pushed the door open carefully and called out, "Hello." My voice echoed in the small space. Everything looked normal. Nothing was missing. I checked the windows, all locked. I examined the door frame for signs of forced entry and found nothing. I convinced myself I must have been more distracted that morning than I realized. But I started taking pictures of my apartment before I left each day, just to have a record of how I'd left things. It seemed paranoid, but it gave me peace of mind. The pictures proved I wasn't losing my mind. Small things were definitely being moved. A chair pushed slightly away from the table. My toothbrush in a different slot in the holder. The shower curtain pulled closed when I always left it open to air dry. I called the landlord, Mr. Vasquez, and told him I thought someone might have a key to my apartment. "Impossible," he said. "You have the only keys. I don't even keep copies after tenants move in. Company policy." "Then how do you explain?" "Maybe the building's settling," he interrupted. "These old places, they shift. Doors can swing open if they're not latched properly. But doors don't rearrange toothbrushes." I had the locks changed anyway, paying for it myself. For a week, everything seemed normal. The scratching in the walls had stopped and nothing was moved. I started to relax. Then I found the photographs. I was looking for a pen in my kitchen junk drawer when my fingers brushed against something that shouldn't have been there. A small stack of photos. Polaroids, the kind you don't see much anymore. My hands shook as I pulled them out. They were pictures of me, sleeping in my bed, sitting at my kitchen table eating cereal, watching TV on my couch. In some of them, I was clearly unaware I was being photographed. In others, my head was turned slightly toward the camera, as if I'd sensed something but not quite woken up. The most disturbing photo showed me standing in my kitchen in my pajamas, looking directly at my bedroom wall with a confused expression. I remembered that moment. It was the night I'd heard the tapping and got up to investigate. Someone had been watching me through the wall, photographing my confusion about the very sounds they were making. I called the police immediately. Officer Martinez was kind but skeptical. She examined the photos and agreed they were disturbing, but pointed out that there were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen, and I hadn't actually seen an intruder. Could be an ex-boyfriend, she suggested. Someone you gave a key to? I explained that I just moved to Portland and barely knew anyone, let alone well enough to exchange keys. She took a report and said they'd increase patrols in the area, but I could tell she thought I was probably involved with whoever was doing this. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with a baseball bat across my knees, listening for any sound. Around 3 a.m., I heard it, not scratching this time, but a soft thud from somewhere inside the wall behind my bed. I grabbed a flashlight and started examining the walls more carefully. The building was old, with several layers of paint over the original plaster. In my bedroom, near the head of my bed, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a section of wall where the paint seemed slightly different, as if it had been touched up. I pressed my ear against it and heard the faintest sound of breathing. My blood turned to ice. Someone was in the wall, right now, listening to me listen to them. I grabbed my phone and keys and ran. I spent the night in my car in a 24-hour diner parking lot, calling the police every few hours to ask if they could come back and search the building. The next morning, I met Officer Martinez and the building superintendent at my apartment. We discovered what I'd suspected. There was a space between the walls, accessible through a panel in the utility closet in the hallway. The panel was hidden behind some pipes and was almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Inside the space, we found a sleeping bag, water bottles, energy bars, and dozens more photographs. Pictures of not just me, but other tenants in the building. Mrs. Margaret reading in her armchair. The young couple upstairs arguing in their kitchen. The man on the first floor who worked night shifts, photographed sleeping during the day. There were detailed notes about our schedules, our habits, our vulnerabilities. My file was the thickest, 3 months of careful observation. He knew I worked late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He knew I always checked my locks twice before bed. He knew I talked to myself when I cooked dinner. They never caught him. The space had multiple exit points, including one that led to the basement and another that connected to the fire escape outside my bedroom window. By the time we found his hiding place, he was long gone. I moved out that day. I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping in a place where someone had been watching me for months, photographing my most private moments, learning my routines with the patience of a predator. Sometimes I wonder if he followed me to my new apartment. When I hear settling sounds in the walls or find something slightly out of place, my heart races. I've become obsessive about checking for hidden panels, for spaces where someone could hide. The worst part isn't the violation of privacy, though that was terrible. It's the knowledge that for months, I was never truly alone. Every private moment, every vulnerable instant was shared with someone whose intentions I'll never fully understand. I still take pictures of my apartment before I leave. I still check my locks obsessively. And sometimes, late at night, I press my ear against the wall and listen for the sound of breathing that isn't my own. Because once you know how easy it is for someone to live in the spaces between your walls, you never feel completely safe again. Well, I got my new phone number in March. The Verizon rep assured me it was completely fresh, no previous owner, no history. Clean slate, she said with a smile. I should have known that was too good to be true. The first call came on a Thursday evening while I was making dinner. Unknown number, local area code. I almost didn't answer, but I was expecting a call back from a potential employer, so I picked up. Marcus, a woman's voice, breathless and panicked. Marcus, thank God. Listen to me very carefully. They know about the money. You need to disappear. Tonight. I'm sorry, you have the wrong number, I said. There's no Marcus here. Silence. Then who is this? My name is David. You've reached the wrong number. She hung up without another word. I thought nothing of it. Wrong numbers happen all the time. I went back to my pasta and forgot about it completely. The second call came 2 days later, Saturday morning at 6 a.m. Same unknown number. Marcus, you piece of shit. You think you can just ignore me? A man's voice this time, gravelly and angry. You owe Tommy 15 grand, and he wants it now. No more games. This is David, I said, still groggy from sleep. You have the wrong number. There's no Marcus at this number. Don't fuck with me, Marcus. We know this is your number. We know where you live. My stomach dropped. Look, I just got this number 2 weeks ago. You're looking for someone else. 2847 Oakwood Drive, apartment 3B. Blue Honda Civic, license plate GXJ 4829. You want me to keep going? Those were my address and license plate number. My blood went cold. How do you? The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Someone was looking for a person named Marcus who apparently owed money to dangerous people. And somehow, they had connected my new phone number to my personal information. I called Verizon that Monday. After 20 minutes on hold and being transferred 3 times, I finally got a supervisor who could help. Sir, I can confirm that number was previously assigned to a Marcus Rivera, she said. It was disconnected for non-payment about 6 weeks ago. But your rep told me it was a clean number with no history. Well, technically it is clean from our perspective. We don't maintain records of previous owners' activities. Can you give me his forwarding information? I need to let these people know he's not at this number anymore. I'm sorry, sir. We can't release customer information. Privacy policy. So I was stuck. I had Marcus Rivera's old phone number. His debt collectors had somehow connected that number to my personal information. And I had no way to reach Marcus to tell him people were looking for him. The calls continued. Different voices, but always asking for Marcus, always about money he owed. $15,000 to Tommy. $8,000 to someone called the Fish. $3,000 for something involving a poker game in Riverside. I started keeping a log. The names, the amounts, anything that might be useful if I needed to go to the police. But what would I tell them? That people were calling me by mistake? That wasn't exactly a crime. Then the text started. The first one came on a Wednesday. Marcus, last chance. Midnight. You know where? I replied, wrong number. I'm not Marcus. Please update your contacts. The response was immediate. Stop playing games. We can see you. I was sitting in my living room when I got that text. I immediately went to my windows and looked out at the street. A black SUV was parked across from my building, engine running. I couldn't see through the tinted windows, but someone was definitely inside. I called the police. Officer Kim took my statement and went to check on the SUV, but by the time she got outside, it was gone. These people are looking for someone who used to have your phone number, she explained. Best thing you can do is change your number. But I just started a new job and had given this number to dozens of people, employers, doctors, the DMV, my bank. Changing it would be a nightmare. Can't you trace the calls? I asked. Not unless they're actually threatening you directly, she said. Calling you by the wrong name isn't a crime. That night, I got another text. We saw you talking to the cops. Big mistake. Then a photo. It was me, standing on my front steps, talking to Officer Kim. The photo was taken from street level, maybe from that black SUV. I screenshot everything and called the police again. This time they took it more seriously. Detective Morrison opened a case and advised me to keep documenting everything. These people think you're Marcus Rivera, he said. Do you have any idea how they connected your personal information to his old phone number? I didn't, but over the next few days, I started getting calls from other people looking for Marcus. His dentist's office, confirming an appointment. A woman named Jessica, who seemed to be his ex-girlfriend, asking why he wasn't returning her calls. Someone from a construction company asking if he was available for work next week. It was like inheriting someone else's entire life, but only the parts that could get me hurt. The breakthrough came when Jessica called back, frustrated that Marcus kept insisting he wasn't Marcus. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing," she said, "but I know this is your number. You gave it to me yourself 3 months ago." "Jessica, listen to me carefully," I said. "I'm not Marcus Rivera. I got this phone number 2 weeks ago from Verizon. Marcus had it before me." Long pause. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. And now people he owes money to are threatening me because they think I'm him." "Oh shit," she said. "Oh, Marcus, what did you do?" She told me everything. Marcus Rivera was a construction worker who had gambling problems. He got in deep with some loan sharks and had been dodging them for months. About 2 months ago, he told her he was going to disappear for a while, maybe go stay with his cousin in Arizona until things cooled down. "But he must have given people your address somehow," she said. "Marcus would never have lived in your neighborhood. He couldn't afford it." That's when I realized what had probably happened. Marcus had given his creditors false information, my address, probably picked at random, to throw them off his trail. But he kept using his real phone number until Verizon cut him off for non-payment. Well, I got his old number. The creditors connected the dots. Same phone number, but now it was linked to real information, my information, which they could easily find through reverse phone lookups and public records. Jessica gave me Marcus's cousin's number in Arizona. I called and explained the situation. Marcus's cousin, Carlos, was suspicious at first, but eventually believed me. "Marcus is here," he admitted. "He's been staying with me for about a month. But he's scared to contact anyone because he thinks those guys are monitoring his communications." "They are," I said. "They're monitoring mine now, too." Carlos promised to have Marcus call his creditors and explain that he'd change his phone number. But the damage was already done. These people had my information now, and they weren't just going to forget about it because Marcus called them. The harassment escalated. More photos of me going about my daily life, leaving for work, grocery shopping, getting my mail. Always with threatening messages. "We're watching. You can't hide forever. Pay up or else." The worst incident happened on a Friday night. I was getting ready for bed when I heard voices in the hallway outside my apartment. Multiple men talking quietly. I put my ear to the door and heard one of them say, "This is it, 3B. I called 911 and whispered my address to the dispatcher. Then I grabbed a knife from my kitchen and waited. They knocked. 3 hard, deliberate knocks. "Marcus Rivera," a voice called. "We know you're in there. Time to settle up." I didn't answer. After a few minutes, I heard them talking again, then footsteps moving away. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they were gone. The officers found evidence that someone had tried to pick my lock. There were fresh scratches on the metal, and the door frame was slightly damaged. That was enough for Detective Morrison to escalate the case. With evidence of attempted breaking and entering, he could justify more resources. They traced some of the phone numbers to a loan shark operation and arrested 3 men over the next week. But Tommy, the one Marcus owed the most money to, was never caught. And I kept getting calls. I finally changed my number in June, 3 months after this nightmare began. I had to update every account, every contact, every piece of documentation. It was exactly the hassle I'd wanted to avoid, but I had no choice. The new number came with its own warning from Verizon. This number was previously assigned to another customer. You may receive calls intended for the previous owner. I almost laughed. Or cried. I couldn't tell which. For months afterward, I was paranoid about black SUVs. I vary my routes to work, check my locks obsessively, and jumped every time my new phone rang. The police never found Tommy, and as far as I know, Marcus Rivera is still hiding out in Arizona. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just changed my number immediately after that first threatening call. Would it have ended there? Or were these people already too invested in the hunt to let it go? I've learned to be more careful about what information is publicly available about me. I've made my social media profiles private, removed my address from online directories, and been more cautious about who I give my phone number to. But the truth is, in our connected world, there's only so much you can do to stay invisible. All it takes is one wrong number, one case of mistaken identity, and suddenly you're living someone else's nightmare. I still have Marcus Rivera's contact information in Arizona. Sometimes I think about calling him, asking if those people ever found him, if he ever paid what he owed. But then I remember that getting involved in his life is what caused this problem in the first place. Some wrong numbers are just wrong numbers. Others can destroy your sense of safety forever. I hope Marcus got his life together, and I hope Tommy never figures out where I really live. I started driving for rideshare in October to make extra money for the holidays. The day shift was too competitive, too many drivers fighting for the same fares. But nights? Nights were different. Fewer drivers meant more rides, better pay, and usually just drunk college kids or airport runs. Easy money, I thought. I wish I'd stuck to driving during the day. The first time I picked up Elena was on a Thursday around 11 p.m. The pickup location was downtown, outside a 24-hour diner. When I pulled up, she was already waiting by the curb, tall, thin, wearing a dark coat with the hood up. She got in the back seat without saying hello. "Where to?" I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. 2847 Riverside Drive, she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I punched the address into my GPS. It was way out in the industrial district, about a 20-minute drive. Not unusual for a night fare. Sometimes people need rides to weird places. She didn't talk during the ride, just sat there, staring out the window. When we arrived at the address, a dark street lined with warehouses, she handed me a $20 bill for a $12 fare. "Keep the change," she said, and got out without another word. I watched her walk toward one of the warehouses until she disappeared into the shadows. Something felt off about the whole interaction, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Maybe it was just the location, or the way she'd been so quiet, or how she'd paid cash when most people use the app. I didn't think about it again until she requested me a second time. It was the following Tuesday, same time, same pickup location. When I saw the name Elena pop up on my phone, I recognized it immediately. Same passenger requesting the same driver was unusual, but not unheard of. Maybe she worked late shifts and needed reliable transportation. This time, the destination was different, 1205 Industrial Boulevard. Still in the warehouse district, but on the other side. Again, she was waiting by the curb when I arrived. Same dark coat, same hood up, same quiet demeanor. "Good evening," I said, trying to be friendly. She just nodded and gave me the address, even though it was already in the app. During the ride, I tried to make conversation. "Work late again?" "Something like that," she replied. "Must be tough working nights." "I'm just doing this part-time, but the schedule takes some getting used to." She didn't respond. When we arrived, she again paid cash with a generous tip and disappeared into the darkness between the buildings. Over the next 3 weeks, Elena requested me 6 more times. Always Tuesday or Thursday nights. Always around 11 p.m. Always to locations in the industrial district. Different addresses each time, but all in the same general area. She never made conversation, never seemed to recognize me as a repeat driver, and always paid cash. I started to get curious. What kind of work required someone to go to different warehouses in the middle of the night? Why always pay cash? And why request me specifically instead of just taking whoever was available? The seventh ride was when I started to get suspicious. The pickup location was the same diner, but this time Elena was 15 minutes late. When she finally got in the car, she seemed more agitated than usual. "Sorry," she said. "Had to make sure I wasn't followed." The destination was 3394 Commerce Street. As we drove, I found myself paying more attention to our route. Elena kept looking over her shoulder, checking the mirrors, watching the other cars on the road. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said, but her voice was tense. When we arrived, instead of getting out immediately, she sat in the car for a moment, scanning the area. "You come here a lot," I said. "For work?" She looked at me in the rearview mirror for the first time in any of our rides. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. "You keep track of where you take people?" "Not usually," I said, "but you've requested me specifically several times. Same general area each time. Just curious what brings you out here so late." She studied my face in the mirror for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "You asked a lot of questions." She paid and left, but this time I watched more carefully. Instead of heading toward the warehouses, she walked back toward the main road and got into a car that had been parked about a block away. A car that hadn't been there when we arrived. That's when I realized Elena wasn't going to these locations for work. She was using me to scout them. I started paying closer attention to the news, looking for anything happening in the industrial district. 3 days after that last ride, I found what I was looking for. Warehouse break-in nets thieves $50,000 in electronics. The address was 3394 Commerce Street, exactly where I dropped Elena off. I went back through my records and cross-referenced every address Elena had given me with local news reports. Over the past month, 4 of the 6 locations have been burglarized within a week of our rides. Always electronics or valuable merchandise. Always clean jobs with no signs of forced entry, suggesting the thieves had inside knowledge of security systems and schedules. Elena was using me to case potential targets. She'd request rides to scout locations, check for security, observe patterns, then come back later with her crew to rob the places. I should have gone to the police immediately, but I was scared. What they thought I was involved. What if Elena found out I'd figured out her scheme? I decided to stop accepting her ride requests and hope she'd move on to other drivers. But Elena had other plans. The next Tuesday, she didn't request a ride through the app. She called me directly. "Hello, Jake," she said. My blood went cold. I never told her my name. It wasn't displayed in the app, and I'd never introduced myself. "Where did you get this number?" I asked. "I've been watching you," she said. "Learning about you, just like you've been learning about me." "I don't know what you're talking about." 2847 Riverside Drive, 1205 Industrial Boulevard, 3394 Commerce Street. Should I keep going? She recited every address I'd taken her to. "You've been keeping track. That makes you either very smart or very dangerous." My hands were shaking. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'll delete all the records, forget this whole thing." "Too late for that," she said. "You know too much. But I have a proposition. You can keep driving for me, keep your mouth shut, and I'll cut you in for 10%. Or," she didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. "I need to think about it," I said. "You have until Thursday. I'll text you the pickup location." She hung up. I sat in my car, trying to process what had just happened. I was being blackmailed into becoming an accessory to burglary. If I refused, Elena had made it clear there would be consequences. If I agreed, I'd be crossing a line I could never uncross. I spent the next day researching Elena online, trying to find out who she really was. Using the phone number she'd called from, I was able to trace it to a name, Elena Vasquez. A search of public records showed she had a criminal history, several arrests for burglary and theft, though most charges have been dropped or pled down. Armed with this information, I finally went to the police. Detective Rodriguez listened to my story and examined the evidence I compiled. The pattern was clear, and they were already investigating the warehouse break-ins. "You did the right thing coming to us," he said. "But you're probably going to need protection. If this woman is as dangerous as you think, she won't be happy when she finds out you talked." They set up a sting operation. On Thursday night, I would pick up Elena as requested, but police would be following at a distance. The plan was to catch her in the act of scouting another location. Thursday came. Elena's text arrived at 10:45 p.m. Usual spot. 11:15. I arrived at the diner early, my hands sweating as I gripped the steering wheel. At exactly 11:15, Elena appeared and got into the back seat. But something was different. This time, she wasn't alone. A man slid in beside her, tall, muscular, with cold eyes and a jacket that couldn't quite hide the bulge of a weapon underneath. "Change of plans, Jake," Elena said. "We're going for a longer ride tonight." "Where to?" My voice cracked slightly. "Just drive. Head toward the highway." I started driving, hoping the police were still following. The man hadn't said a word, but I could feel his presence behind me like a physical weight. "You know, Jake," Elena said conversationally, "I did some research on you too. Found out where you live, where you work your day job, where your sister lives with her 2 kids. My blood turned to ice. Leave my family out of this. That's up to you. See, I think you've been talking to people you shouldn't be talking to, and that's a problem." We were on the highway now, heading out of the city. I had no idea where they were taking me, but I knew it wasn't anywhere good. "Elena," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I haven't talked to anyone. I just want to forget this whole thing and move on." "I wish I could believe that," she said. "But you're the kind of person who keeps records, asks questions, pays attention to details. That makes you a liability." The man next to her shifted, and I heard the distinctive sound of a gun being cocked. That's when I saw the flashing lights in my rearview mirror. The next few minutes were chaos. Police cars surrounded us, sirens wailing. Elena shouted at me to keep driving, but I pulled over and threw my hands up. The man beside her was yelling something, but I couldn't make out the words over the noise. Both Elena and her associate, who turned out to be her boyfriend and partner in the burglary ring, were arrested. They found enough evidence in their apartment to connect them to a dozen warehouse break-ins across the city. Detective Rodriguez told me later that I was lucky. They'd been planning to kill me and dump my body somewhere remote. The only reason I survived was because they decided to take me out of the city first, which gave the police time to set up the roadblock. I quit driving for rideshare that night. The extra money wasn't worth risking my life, and every time I got behind the wheel, I kept looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see Elena's cold eyes staring back at me. The trial was 6 months later. Elena pleaded guilty and got 8 years. Her boyfriend got 12. The prosecutor said my testimony was crucial in getting convictions, but I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd stumbled into a nightmare and barely made it out alive. I still get paranoid sometimes, especially at night. When I see the same car behind me for too long, or when someone pays too close attention to my routine, I remember Elena's voice on the phone. "I've been watching you." The truth is, in the gig economy, you never really know who you're serving. That passenger in your back seat could be anyone. A tired worker heading home, a college student going to a party, or someone using your service to scout their next target. I learned that trust is a luxury drivers can't afford. Every ride is a gamble, every passenger a potential threat. The money might be good, but some risks aren't worth taking. I work in an office now, 9 to 5, dealing with spreadsheets instead of strangers. It's boring, predictable, safe. And after everything that happened with Elena, safe is exactly what I need.